Welcome to the podcast series, Irish by the Grace of God. And here's your host, Tony Gormley.
Great news, everybody. Irish by the Grace of God have now got a badly needed sponsor. McDonagh3April2024 are an Irish company that specialise in rental accommodation on a Monday to Friday basis. And homeowners can rent out a room in their home for part of the week and still avail of the government's rent a room scheme and earn up to 14,000 per annum tax-free. That's 14 grand. That's a serious incentive. They also have a presence in the UK with getdigs.co.uk, and their homeowners can earn up to £7,500 sterling per annum tax-free for renting out a room. And now they're also launching in the USA with a website called 5sleeps.com. That's the number 5 followed by sleeps.com, 5sleeps.com. So check out the websites for more details and make contact with them. Hey folks, welcome to this week's edition of Irish by the Grace of God. My name's Tony Gormley. Above me, check out our sponsors, getdigs.co.uk, getdigs.ie, and 5sleeps.com, all involved in Monday to Friday room rental. So they're well worth checking out. On this week's episode, my guest is John McDonagh. He hails from New York City and originally comes from Donegal. I describe him as a very colourful character with a very fascinating life. I first came upon him on social media sites, Irish sites, Instagram, YouTube, etc., and began following him. And then we struck up some conversations, and I rang him a few times, and he willingly said he'd do the podcast for me. I go straight in actually to his background, his Zoom background, because he's a fascinating painting as the background. So we'll kick straight into that, and he tells the story of the painting as the background. And then, to be honest, I haven't edited much because every sentence he utters is fascinating, and I didn't want to miss anything. And secondly is I was too lazy to do it, so it's pretty much verbatim what you're getting. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Share with your friends if you can, and if you know anybody with an Irish background who has a fascinating story, please get in touch. Okay, thank you, and here we go.
Nice background as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous painting, actually, that's traveling the country.
Okay.
A famous artist named Mary Wythe started a project about 10 years ago, and she contacted an Army veteran or a military veteran in every state, never told what she was doing. And she picked me for New York, found me as a cab driver. And then about 7 years after she just took pictures around Manhattan, she invited all of us from all the states to come down to South Carolina for that. And it was a national news story. And now this painting is on a 5-year tour of the country.
That's you in the cab, so.
Yeah. That's me, arm out the door. Yep.
Very good. Good stuff. Look, we kick off. So my guest this evening is John McDonagh. Just a very, I don't know John from Adam. I just saw some very interesting stories about him online. Decided to make contact because I saw that he had an Irish background, a very rich Irish background. He hails from Donegal, and he's led a very, let's say, it's a colourful life, I'd say, John. So
you can put it that way.
Yeah. So tell us about your childhood in Ireland.
Well, it all started in, you could almost say in the 30s, because of where my mother and father come from. The immigration was normally to Glasgow, So my father caught a boat, a cattle boat from Derry to Glasgow with his brother. Ended up there, did not like it at all. He ended up in the Gorbals. Very tough place, very rough. And he came back. The war interceded. My one uncle went to New Zealand Army, was a prisoner of war on Rommel, injured, wounded in Italy, came back to Ireland. My father rode the war out in Ireland. And then in 49, he came to New York, got a job with Con Edison, and then went back to Donegal to marry my mother in Pettigo. And then they came back in 53 or 52. I was born in 54. There was 3 of us at that stage. There was 6 at the end, 3 brothers, 3 sisters. We went back to Donegal. So then I went to school there, and then in the early 60s, we came back to New York.
So why did you go
I've been
back?
going back and forth to Ireland ever since. Every summer, I've been working on my uncle's sheep farm, clipping, dipping, rucking hay, foot and turf. So real old school farming.
Brilliant. And why, John, did you go to New York and then suddenly go back to Donegal? What was the reason behind that?
I think her mother was getting sick, with my grandmother. So we all went back. And then we came back to New York, and then eventually her mother did die. She went back for the funeral and everything. So, but there was a constant moving of going back and forth,
Right,
all the time.
So you described, coming back to Donegal and working on the farm, doing the turf, all that kind of stuff. It must have been a huge contrast from a small little village in Donegal to New York City. How did you find the change? What were the differences?
Well, in the beginning, I didn't like it. And I would say to my mother, I know why you left. I just came back from there. But then as the years went by, we just loved it, me, my brothers and sisters, because my mother wanted us off the streets of New York because that was trouble if you were running the streets. So you weren't getting in much trouble up on a hill in Donegal, rounding up sheep or bringing turf in from the bog. So we grew to like it, and then been doing it, going back and forth. I haven't been doing that ever since.
And would you class yourself as an Irishman or an American?
I would say American, even though I have Irish citizenship. I got an Irish passport. I got my PPS number. I go back and forth. I don't really see much difference from the way I live. And, the lifestyle culturally in New York, I would be Irish, going to, Irish pubs, traditional Irish music. And then going back, I don't go back as a tourist. I go back to see the friends and relations.
That's great.
So it's whatever people want to call me. I don't care.
You mentioned the street life in New York when you were growing up. Describe, the problems on the streets.
Well, you got to realize it was real tough for my mother to raise 6 of us in Queens, New York. When I was coming of age, say in the 60s, drugs had hit.
Yeah.
And say I would come in high on weed. My mother would ask, "Let me smell your breath." And I would just laugh. And she goes, "Well, he's not drinking." She had no clue to the effect that drugs were doing to the neighborhood, between, heroin and weed and stuff like that. And, it just destroyed the neighborhood when it swept through.
So heroin was prevalent back then as well in New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, you see any of the old movies with jazz musicians and stuff like that, and you see any old movies, like one of the first ones, Panic in Needle Park with Al Pacino, the Upper West Side, heroin addicts, Lower East Side, nothing but heroin addicts. And it's, it would have been very hard for my mother to deal with all of that and trying to raise 6 of a family.
Yeah. And that kind of drug scene is rife in Ireland at the moment as well.
Yeah, no, I see it. I read about it. I just can't believe the amount of drugs that are confiscated.
Yeah.
Never mind what gets through.
Exactly.
I mean, like that. A couple of years ago, there was a plane that flew in with a plane load of drugs, I think, into Longford or somewhere. I said, "Oh my God!" It is just.
So so you did some school in Donegal, and then did you finish school in New York?
Oh yeah, yeah. I only went to school in Donegal for a year or two, and
Okay,
then the rest of the school here. And then when I graduated, it was 1973. The draft was coming to an end. The Vietnam War would go on for about another year and a half. So me and four guys from the neighborhood signed up and joined the United States Army because they guaranteed you wouldn't go to Vietnam. You would go to a country you could pick. So we
okay,
picked Germany, and we all ended up in Germany.
okay. So just jumping back a step, what about school in New York City? Kind of watch again, going back to watching old movies. That was that a tough scene as well?
Well, the beginning wasn't tough. We went to Catholic school. I went to St.
Oh yeah,
Margaret's here in Middle Village. But after that, I went to public school, which was a whole nother thing. Just
yeah,
lawless fights. And at that time in the early 70s, there was constant race riots. So at the high school that I graduated from, the Italians and the Irish would hang out together from
okay,
Queens, but the Puerto Ricans and blacks from Brooklyn who were in the school. So there would be constant clashes between the different gangs and stuff like that. So there wasn't much learning going on when you
yeah.
had that type of tension and race riots going on in the school.
Right, and so you came out of school and you signed up for military straight away. Did you think of any other options? Like I think we discussed before, the options generally for an Irish person in New York is going into the cops, into sanitation, fireman, all that kind of stuff. Did you?
Yeah, that would, but I was only 18 at the time. But
All
the
right,
the real career path for a son of Irish immigrants is you do your time in the service, you get out, you take the test for the fire department, the NYPD or the sanitation, and you get on the job. So when I got out of the army at the end of 75, New York was going bankrupt, and there was the famous headline, Ford to city drop dead. So the city of New York was actually laying off cops and firemen, and you couldn't even take the test to get on the job because when they did eventually start rehiring, they rehired all the cops and firemen that they had laid off. So there were no classes at all. So when I got out, it was a horrible time, New York City. Crime was off the charts. So I went and got my hack license, which is a license to drive a yellow cab in New York City, just thinking I would ride this out until they start issuing the test again. And then, like I said, life takes over, and I've been now driving in 2 centuries and for 40 years here in the city.
and take me back to your military in Germany. How long did you spend in Germany? And
Well, it was the same. See, that was part of the reason for joining. It was the same as the draft, 2 years. If you were drafted, it was 2
years.
years. And if
Okay,
we were joined, and I'll never forget, I was sworn in Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn, and we've flown down to, Fort Jackson in South Carolina. I'd never been down south. So I was a hippie. I had long hair down to my shoulders, and I'm standing at attention, and this sergeant gets up to my face and he goes, "Where y'all from, boy?" And I said, "New York City." He said, "Welcome to the United States. I'm glad you made it." And that was it. That was my introduction to the South. That to them was the real United States, not where I came from.
an officer and a gentleman. Um, so, yeah, and did you enjoy your time, the 2 years?
Oh no, I hated it.
Did
Uh,
you?
Whatever was going on in the States was going on in the Army. So there were race riots, nothing but drugs. Germany at that stage was overrun with drugs. Heroin was coming in from Turkey, hashish was coming in from Amsterdam, and all the GIs were high. You couldn't go downtown because the Germans were protesting the war. And you had a group called the Baader Meinhof gang. So they were going around killing soldiers, American and British soldiers that were stationed in Germany at that time. So you just stayed on the base, got drunk, got high, and you just put your time in till you got out and got back to where you were from. So that was the general gist of it.
Wow.
So I hated it.
So back to New York City. What year would that been, John, when you came out?
The end of 75.
75, and so you get your cab license, and you find yourself what you thought was going to be a quick stint ends up 40 years.
Yeah, just driving, and then eventually I got married. I had 3 kids, and driving a yellow cab out of a garage. Now, I did not own a medallion, which means you own the yellow cab. When you work out of a garage, you could pick the days you want to work and the shift. So with kids, I was able to, take them to school and work at night, or do a day shift and do stuff at night, go to their, events at night. So in that sense, it worked out. But, it's still a 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
Whatever shift you take, it's 12 hours. So if I worked a day shift, I would start at 4 in the morning and go to 4 in the afternoon. Or if I was working the night shift, you go out at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and you bring the cab back at 4 or 5 in the morning. So the cabs never stopped. Like when the night guys came in, the day guys just jumped into it, and you just kept rolling.
And I can imagine a night shift in New York City is a tough gig, is it?
Yeah, well, I had to give it up eventually because, between people jumping out, I had a gun put to my head. I had an ice pick put to the side of my neck, robberies and stuff like that. It was very dangerous. At one stage during the 80s, there was a cab driver a month being killed.
Jeez.
Yeah. You got to realize it was a big hit at that time because you were carrying cash. So if a junkie got in and he managed to rob you, he got his $100 or something. So he got his quick fix for the day, but you were dead. But he didn't care.
Again, going back to the movies, it's usually a metal mesh between the front and back. Is that the case?
Yeah. It's called a bulletproof partition.
All right.
But you have to realize back then, there's no radio, there's no power door locks, and there's no air conditioning. So you could be at a light looking forward, and next thing the doors open up and people jump in because you can't lock the doors. You have to physically reach over or get out of the cab and go into the back and close it. So, and then, you were dealing in strictly cash. There was no swiping, no credit cards. That's all changed now. Everything has changed, but that's the way it was like back then.
That's scary. That's scary stuff, especially if you have kids at home and stuff like that. So how long did you do the nights for, John?
Oh, probably like 20 years. I did half and half. When you're younger, you could deal with that, getting into fights with customers and stuff like that. I'll just tell you one scenario, and I do it in my play Off the Meter. If someone got into the cab and they said they were going to Avenue B and 9th Street in the Lower East Side, we called it the Alphabet Jungle. You were frightened to go down there. You would come down Avenue B, and it looked like Dresden after World War II. Bombed out buildings, firebombed, and the passenger would point out a building. He said, "You see that building over there? Could you just pull over? Would you mind waiting? I'm just going into the building for 5 minutes. I'm coming right out." Now, you were going to do this because you didn't want to pick up anybody down on Avenue B because you had Tompkins Square Park there, notorious for drugs. So you knew you were getting a fare out of there. So 3 scenarios happened. So the passenger goes up and, you got the newspaper when people used to read newspapers, and you're sitting there, and next thing you hear screaming and yelling. The guy is flying out. He's got a gun in one hand, a bag of dope in the other. He jumps in. He's going, go, go, go. So now I'm a wheelman in a drug deal that he just robbed the drug dealers. So I'm taking off. The only good thing about that is guys that rob drug dealers tend to tip better. Yeah. So then the second scenario is the passenger goes up, and then he comes down minutes later. He's covered in blood. They beat him. They took his watch. They took his wallet. He has no money. And he's pleading with me to take him back where I picked him up. And generally, that would be the Upper East Side. So you would pull up. The doorman would come out, and he told the doorman, pay the fare. And the doorman just paid it. So it's quite obvious this guy got ripped off before because the doorman didn't even blink. He would just pay the fare that was on the meter, knowing he'd get the money later from the passenger. But what generally happened is, before apps and you could buy drugs, the guy went in, he copped his drug dealer got his money, and then I got my fare out of the Lower East Side. So that we were part of the drug trade and drug crime during that time because we were a way to get in and out of certain neighborhoods to cop drugs or rob drug dealers.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a crazy gig to be doing day in, day out, week in, week out over a 40 years.
And the other thing is there was no cell phones. So when you left the garage for the 12 hours, you were, people talk about being off the grid. We were off the charts. Like there was no way to contact anyone. The pay phones were all broken because the drug addicts had robbed the pay phone. So even if you pulled over and tried to make a call home or something like that, you couldn't do it. The phones were all busted up. Where the money was, that was broken off. So when you went out for those 12 hours, that was it. You were on your own. There was no contacting anyone. There's no video cameras to watch you being robbed. So you were one-on-one with the passengers, and now you look back, it was scary times, but at that time, it was just what you dealt with. You didn't, you knew it was scary, but what are you going to do? That's the way it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, were you on a very high stress level throughout that?
Maybe in the beginning, but then you develop an eye about who to pick up and who to pass by.
Okay.
So you cop on. The stress level only goes up is when someone gets in and you get a bad feeling.
Yeah.
About it, and you can sense the way they're acting, the way they're twitching, that something's going to go wrong. He's going to jump out. He's going to try to rob you. But otherwise, I mean, you had the radio on. You were just driving around like normal. It's when someone got in and you got a feeling, and you got a sense of what the passenger was like.
Yeah, it's funny, there's kind of a joke around, Ireland. It's on social media when an Irishman gets into a cab and he's talking to himself. He's saying, "Oh, don't say it, don't say it, no, don't say it, don't say it," and then eventually he says to the cab driver, "Are you busy tonight?"
Yeah. You know what? You don't like hearing that because he's sort of asking you, "Did you make any money tonight?"
Oh yeah.
That's one of the reasons. Like I would always say, like people used to say, "Hey, you having a busy night?" No, terrible. I have no money. Like that's what I would say because to me, he's wanting to know how much money I have. That's the way I feel, anyway.
Yeah, but it's funny. I think in Ireland it's the opposite. It's the Irishman just genuinely trying to start a conversation, or the Irish person,
I guess.
But I think as well, I read on one of your social media, did your brother have some, I won't say connection.
Well, it's not connections. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, right?
Right.
And for whatever reason, we should have immigrated in Queens to Woodside, Sunnyside, where our people were living, the Irish. We ended up in a place called Middle Village, which was mainly immigrant Italian. And the first thing my mother does with the house, she paints it green to let the Italians know an Irish family has moved into the neighborhood. So when you grow up, because everybody's Catholic, we went to Catholic school, we played softball together. So, when the guys were joining the cops and firemen, some of the Italian guys were joining the mob. But, people would call them gangsters. We called them our friends.
Yeah.
So they have these clubs in our neighborhood where you could go down and gamble and place bets on the football or basketball or baseball. So they provided a service for the neighborhood that you couldn't get anywhere else. And so that was normal. That wasn't like, great. I mean, you see it in all the movies. If you watch Goodfellas and that, there's always clubs where people go down and gamble. You can play cards, bet on games and stuff like that. So, that was a constant in our lives.
Right. And so, John, you're working away as a cab. That's your furry friend trying to get a look.
Don't worry, he's going out the window very shortly.
You're working away on the cabs, and like how I got to know about you was a guy called Kareem, the YouTuber.
No, he's not a YouTuber. See that you're starting to date yourself. It's like myself. He's a TikToker.
A TikToker. You're
He's
right.
not a YouTuber. And I'm telling you now, YouTube is for old people.
Yeah,
And
YouTube.
well, YouTube or Facebook, because like my Facebook has become an obituary page. Every morning I owe it up. I'm losing people that follow me almost every day. Sorry to announce so and so died. Sorry to announce. So young people do not do Facebook and stuff. Everything is TikTok. Now, I was never part of that world until about 2 weeks ago.
Go away. But he has a huge follower. He's
Yeah. And you know what? I just looked it up before you called. We're up to 4 million views. It's a 6-part series. Now, people think, oh, a 6-part series. But each part is 2 minutes. And it is so professionally done. It's called Keep the Meter Running. And he interviews cab drivers from around the world. He was in Cairo. He was all over. So he found out about me through my radio show that I do, and we'll talk about it later, with Malachi McCourt, brother of Frank McCourt, great Limerick man. And that one of the listeners, we'll call him Uncle Gino from the Bronx, his nephew in Brooklyn was a cameraman for Kareem Rahman. And he contacted him and he said, listen, get this guy on. So we set it up, and I went out for a couple of hours with him where he had a cameraman in the back, a cameraman in the front, and we just talked for 2 hours. And he said, well, where do you like to eat? And I said, I like to go to Katz's Deli on Houston Street, which is the last famous Jewish deli in the Lower East Side. And I would recommend anybody coming over, you have to experience Katz's Deli. So we went there, and I picked up another friend who drives a cab, Seth Goldman, and we went in there, and that video right now is almost up to 3 million. That video alone has been viewed 3 million times.
And so was that your first kind of venture into social media? Is that how it kind of kicked off?
No, I have YouTube, I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have Twitter. But I got fed up with all these new platforms that are opening up. And I just said, how much more can I do here? So that's why I never ventured into TikTok. So now I got to interview Kareem on my radio show and talked about the psychology of TikTok, which I didn't realize. Everything has to be kept to 2 minutes because the attention span of the American or the human being, it's very quick.
Yeah.
And his editing is 1 to every 2 seconds, a different view. Him in the back, front, Katz's Deli, table, sandwich. So that's constantly going and going and going. And it's very like boom, 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 boom. Like, it's not like, oh, shucks, I'm going to throw up a video and hope people watch it. Oh, my God. He knows all the algorithms. He knows the certain words that you can use that will trigger the algorithm to have people watch it. Like, the whole TikTok thing is a science, and it's for selling.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at TikTok, it is so professional when you get on it as compared to, say, YouTube or Facebook, where literally you're on your iPhone, you're showing it, no editing, you download the video, and that's it. You throw it up. But TikTok is a whole different world.
Right. And so, if you don't mind me saying so, for a mature person to be into all these social media platforms, fair play to you.
Yeah, but you know what? That's what everybody's doing. But I got 3 girls, and a lot of them, they set me up on it and set it up and showed me how to go about doing it. And now I have a TikTok account. So, and because now I want to follow what's going on. And now I'm throwing up my videos onto TikTok. But I don't get anywhere near what he gets. I mean, this is how crazy TikTok makes you, right? I'm telling my daughter, out of the 6 videos, the one at Cats is almost at 3 million now. Now, the one I do a poem in is at right now at the moment like 32 or 33,000. And I'm telling my daughter, I'm disappointed. I thought more people would watch that. She goes, you're telling me you're on YouTube and Facebook where you get 10 to 20 views. You're complaining about 30,000 people now looking at one of your videos. I say, you know what? I'm on TikTok. Millions of people are watching. Of course, 30,000 is nothing to me now.
That's where I picked you up, John. I saw you reading the poem to Corinne, What's Happening to My City. And, well, the first thing I thought is that could apply to any city in the world, not just New York. So I don't know if you...
Yeah, I always compare it to something like, Dublin in the rare old times.
Yes.
Or something like that. The observation of someone that was born and raised in Dublin. And these are just my observations but the history of that poem is that there's an organization, a literary organization called PEN, PEN. And every year they do a literary festival in New York City for a week. So they have a department within PEN of poetry, and they get working class people to do poetry. Like one year they had upstate farm workers come down and do poetry. They had doormen, they had people working hotels. So one year they had cab drivers. So they got in contact with me and a couple of my friends, and we did it at Joe's Pub in the Public Theater. And the New York Times covered it, and great pictures. And the story read, they call this the Bards of Gridlock. So now the guy that's running PEN says, listen, can you read that poem on opening night at the Great Hall of Cooper Union? Now, the Great Hall of Cooper Union is a theater, one of the most famous theaters in Manhattan. Abraham Lincoln went there, gave a speech about slavery, anti-slavery, and went across the street to McSorley's Ale House, which was a new bar at the time in the 1800s. And then, everybody who's anybody's been there. So I said, yeah, I'll go and do the poem. I was going to close the night out. So when I get down there that night, they bring me into the VIP room. And who's there but Salman Rushdie, who was the president of PEN. So he comes up, hello, my dear man, I love your poetry and stuff. So I'm looking around. I said, this guy's got a fatwa on him. And I'm there like, he's got no bodyguards or nothing. I'm saying, hey, how you doing? How's that fatwa thing going, from Iran? And never knowing that, like last year, a guy from New Jersey went up and stabbed him to complete the fatwa, So that, and then I ended up the night. So they take us out, and I'm sitting in a seat, and they're announcing the people before me. So-and-so from Jamaica has just won the Man Booker Award, and he's eloquent. And the next guy, so-and-so's book has been made into a movie. So-and-so's book has been translated into 23 languages. And I'm going, oh my God, just translate my poem into English. I'm like, what am I doing here with all these great art? And they go, and now to close the night, this is Salman Rushdie. We're going to have a yellow cab driver read a poem. They're like, are you kidding me? So I went up, read that, and it went down well. But, I was in amongst people that were unbelievable.
Fantastic. John, we're going to take a quick break, okay?
Yeah.
And we'll come straight back.
Hey, folks, sorry for the interruption. Just a quick note from our sponsors, getdigs.co.uk, getdigs.ie, and 5sleeps.com. for your Monday to Friday accommodation. And for homeowners, there's serious tax benefits and tax relief on this. Okay, back to John McDonagh and back to our interview.
So, okay, we're back again with John McDonagh. So you were talking about the club, and I know that John, that you had Stephen Fry there at some stage. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, well, here's what happens. Because of the internet and being on there on YouTube and Facebook, I get a lot of producers that contact me for reality shows. Like I was flown out to Los Angeles for The Amazing Race, which is a big, reality show here. And of course it ends in disaster. I really don't take well to Los Angeles. It didn't work out, but I got in contact with a producer in London from the BBC said that Stephen Fry was coming over doing a documentary called Stephen Fry Does America. And he was going to every state in the Union. Like this was going to be a huge travel documentary. And when he came to New York, he wanted me to drive him around because he goes, he's a fellow taxi driver. And the reason he said he owns a black taxi in London, but he doesn't pick up anyone. He goes in the bus lane so he can get into the city center without having to stand in traffic.
Brilliant.
So, and he says he wants to see my New York. And I said to the producer, I said, what am I going to show him? The Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty? I said, anybody could show him that. And I said, let me think about my New York. And then I was thinking, well, really, my New York is not Manhattan, it's Queens. And I said to him, there's these clubs in our neighborhood, you know, with his gambling and mafia and stuff like that. I can probably get him in there. And I said, the only problem is this club had been shot up the week before. There was some sort of dispute among the families, and they shot the club up, and there's bullet holes all over the place. So he didn't believe it. So he literally flies out from London. I take him down there to show, and he's going, oh my, Stephen's going to love this. Stephen will love this place. He goes, can you do me a favor? And I said, well, what's that? He goes, while we're filming, can you promise there'll be no shootings? And I said, I can't promise you that. But I said, if we do it early in the morning, guys that shoot up club, that seems to be a nighttime occupation. That's not a daytime. So then we set it up. You know, I picked him up in Manhattan. We drove him out to Queens, brought him into the club, and I'm going to tell you, he loved it. He was going, oh my, he goes, what's this thing called running the numbers? And then they would tell him about that. And, oh, is there any such thing as fixing horse races? And they're telling him, yeah, we drugged the horses at Aqueduct and Belmont and blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, they tell him that old joke. Yeah, we go to Aqueduct early in the morning to watch the rehearsals so we know what to bet on in the afternoon. So he loved that type, because you can imagine, here's a guy who's hanging out with the Queen.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
now hanging out at a mob club in Queens. So
And,
it was good. And he won a BAFTA award for it.
Jeez. And how did the mob take to him?
To this day, they still don't know who he is. Couldn't care less. But they came down. They were older type guys, old school guys, and they just answered his questions and everything. They had a good time with them, but they don't realize the significance of Stephen Fry and what he means, say, to the British people, and even in Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, he got law changed with Gay Byrne, that interview he did on blasphemy.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's a big wheel. Like when I do my play in Ireland, it means more, that segment, than here, because I really do have to explain who Stephen Fry is here in New York, you know, whereas in Ireland, I don't need to explain.
No, you don't have to. No. So, John, I'm still kind of curious, or I don't understand fully how you got from the cab into entertainment, because I can list, like, your social media, you're called a captivist.
Yeah, activist, cabtivist, yeah.
So how did you make the jump from driving a cab to...
All right, here's how I made the jump. A friend of mine owns a bar on Lexington Avenue called Rocky Sullivan's, as we called it, the literary lounge of Lexington Avenue. So a lot of us cab drivers were hanging out there telling stories. And, they were going down well, and then they started an open night with open mic. So I started telling the stories there. And then my friend Malachi McCourt, who's really, famous here in New York City, was on soap operas. His book, Amongst Swimming, his brother Frank wrote Angela's Ashes, had saw me doing this. And he called up Kieran O'Reilly from the Irish Repertory Theater from Cavan. He said, you should really look at this guy and see what he's doing. So now in the meantime, I had done the Electric Picnic over in Ireland. I was in the Fringe Festival. So the play is shaping up. So Kieran took it, produced it, and made it an off-Broadway play. And I ran there for 3 months, sold out, rave reviews and everything like that. So ever since I've left there, I've been just touring from Boston to Jersey and then all around Ireland. And I just do it whenever people ask. I go out and I just do it, because it's me and a laptop showing the videos. Because the stories I tell, if I didn't have the video of me and Stephen Fry together, you probably wouldn't believe it. So, but when I show the video, like, oh my God, he was there. Or some of the real crazy things I got involved with. I got the newspaper articles, I saved it. particularly like my party piece is ending up on Fox Television Live because I organized a group called Cabbies Against Bush, CAB, during the Iraq War. And I offered out through a flyer down at the Republican convention in New York, a free ride to Kennedy Airport that anybody wanted to fight the war in Iraq. Me as a veteran, I'll drive you to Kennedy and you can go fight the war. Needless to say, nobody took me up on the offer, but Fox had me on, and I lasted about 1:40 seconds because I hammered away about war profits and warmongers and Halliburton and Bechtel, and you could see the producers going, I am going to kill whoever got this guy on. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I was, taken off the air. But I play that clip. It is like people just roar because it's not often you get working class guys getting on national television to tell a story.
And so, John, Off the Meter is your one man show.
That's right. 70 minutes of storytelling and videos and stuff like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so do you see a difference between, you touched on it there, between American audiences and Irish audience?
The only difference is the clip of Stephen Fry and then the other clip of Richard Hammond from Top Gear, who I taught how to drive a cab in New York. They get it right away. It's far more funnier to them knowing their iconic status that they're hanging out with me. But otherwise, everybody in Ireland's been to New York. Everybody in Ireland has taken a yellow cab at some stage in their life. And I get tortured after the show because now everybody wants to tell me their yellow cab stories. And I'm there, listen, I just did 70 minutes. I'm all cabbied out. I don't need to hear your yellow cab story. Yeah, when I took a yellow cab, I said, please, I don't want to hear it. But no, I had the last 2 years I've been doing it in Ireland, off the charts. The Sean O'Casey Theatre in the East Wall in Dublin, the Abbey Arts Centre in Ballyshannon, the Cork Arts Theatre, and the Teachers Club in Parnell Square. So I've been doing it all over the place.
And did you say you did Electric Picnic? That would be a big gig now in Ireland. That would be very popular.
It sucked. Oh my God. I will never, ever go there again. It was one of the worst things I've ever done in my life. I get over there, I hear all the things about, like, we're stuck in a tent called the Spoken Word tent, right? With a couple of wooden benches, people sleeping on them drunk, right? And the two tents next to us, it's all this BDS music that's blasting right through the thing. So when you got up there, not only were they drunk, you couldn't hear a thing we were saying. There was a couple of us that the Irish government actually brought over to New York to bring a bit of culture to Ireland. And I'm telling you, that place blew. I was never so glad to get out of there in my life. That night when we're leaving, we went looking for the car. It's pouring rain. We forgot where we parked it. So we had to walk up and down every aisle, clicking this bloody clicker of looking for the rent-a-car to get out of there. We were drenched. I was freaking miserable. I said, never again. I don't care if they put me in the fucking main stage with Shaka Khan or whoever's doing it that day. I said, I just hated it. Oh my God.
Welcome to Ireland.
I don't even put it on my resume. Like, I just forget about it. It really.
Listen, I'm fascinated with, like, I'm from Limerick and the podcast from Limerick, and we chatted briefly last week, and the fact that you're co-host a radio show with Malachy McCourt is a big deal, and you would have known Frank as well. Now, I suppose, take me through how you got onto the show, what the show is about, and your relationship with Malachy.
Well, all right, I've been doing the radio show for 40 years, and it has an Irish Republican slant to it. It's called Radio Free Erin. So I've been interviewing Irish Republicans for 40 years that couldn't get on to RTE because of Section 31 or were banned from the BBC. These would be now very respectable Sinn Féin people at the moment, but they couldn't get on. So they had an outlet in New York. But meanwhile, Malachy was on commercial radio. Like, the station I'm in is more community-based, non-commercial, where Malachy was very famous on commercial radio, being against the Vietnam War and stuff like that. Then he had soap operas. He owned bars in Manhattan. He's in a documentary. Everyone should get see. It's about Richard Harris. And there's a segment on Malachi and Richard. When Richard Harris came to New York, the debauchery that happened between the two of them was just absolutely crazy. So at some stage, Malachi gets fired from commercial radio and it comes over to non-commercial. So him and Frank actually had a show on WBAI, of which that's the station I'm on. And then, Frank dies. And then I call up Malachi. I said, Malachi, what about we do a show? Because at this stage, the peace process has come in. Anybody who's anybody is on RTE these days. Yeah, I see Pierce Doherty. He's never off freaking TV now up in Donegal on RTE. So then now me and Malachi for over the last 10 years have been doing, cultural things, theater, whoever's out in New York, bands and stuff like that. So that's what's been going on.
And I know Malachi, like he's at early 90s now. He's
going to be 93 in September.
And his health is not great at the moment.
Well, he's in a rehab center in upstate New York. I was up last week seeing him, and like the body's going, but the mind is still there, and he still does the radio show from his hospital bed. Wow. That he phones it in. So he's still in good form, but age is taking its toll.
Now we also discussed last week that I'm not putting words in your mouth, I hope, but that you thought that the McCourts didn't get the respect that they deserve to get.
Well, they don't. I think it's a disgrace how Limerick has treated them. A perfect illustration of that. Malachi went back about 3 or 4 years ago. Now you got to realize Angelus Ashes started out as a play, a couple of blackguards. The book comes out. The movie comes out. Now there's a musical, right? So yeah. It's historical literature about Ireland. So Malachi flies over there, big brouhaha, big theater in Limerick. And I think the Limerick Leader or one of the Limerick papers says, Angelus Ashes, the musical, based on the controversial book by Frank McCourt. Nowhere in the world would you ever get a headline like that. It would be based on the Pulitzer Prize winning, based on the award winning, based on a million bestseller, Angelus Ashes. So this is the way they're treated. Now, I've been all over Ireland. And when I go to Derry, you go there, you want to be at the Free Derry Wall, get a picture. Right now, it's the Derry girls. You want your picture, not far away. You get a picture there. When I'm in Ballyshannon, there's a statue of Rory Gallagher. You're in Dublin, there's James Joyce. Every city in Ireland has a wall mural or a statue in tribute to their literary geniuses. In Limerick, there's nothing. There's no Angelus Ashes Way. There's no wall mural where people coming through Limerick that they could take a picture in front of. They're not honored in the way Dublin and every other city in Ireland honors their people, like particularly Brendan Behan. What are you going to say? Oh, well, Brendan drank a lot, so we shouldn't put up a mural or a statue to him. Whereas in Limerick, Frank wrote about his life in the 1930s Limerick. That was his life. And people still get pissed off today, particularly the way his mother was treated in the book or whatever. But that was Frank's life. And I've talked to Malachi about that. And Malachi says Frank would not have written the book until his mother died. And then he wrote Angelus Ashes afterwards. And then when I talk to people from Limerick, they're still, oh, look at the way he portrayed Limerick and everything. What did James Joyce portray Dublin in this upbeat way? With everybody banging each other and everything down in Dublin? I mean, come on. So I always feel he's never got treated with the respect. He's never got like the medal to the city or any honors really from Limerick. You know what he did get? Malachi never graduated from school there. He got a certificate from one of the education ministers to say, here's your certificate for graduating school. I mean, BS stuff. I mean, he should be honored over there. And now it's too late. It really is. It's literally too late to do it. But Angelus Ashes should be embraced there. It is, if you watch, there's a show here called Jeopardy, right? I don't know if you ever heard of it. It constantly pops up as a question on Jeopardy. What brothers wrote Angelus Ashes? The McCourt brothers. Like, It's part of our cultural zeitgeist here in America. It's on all these top television shows. There'll be a mention, offhanded mention about Angela's ashes. But over there, I mean, I read one reviewer from Limerick. He went back and looked up the weather forecast during the time frame Frank was growing up, and he actually said it didn't rain as much as he did in the book. I mean, you got to be kidding me. I mean, this is the bullshit that, anybody go to James Joyce when he wrote about, 1911 in Dublin? Well, that day he mentioned on Bloomsday, it really wasn't sunny. I went back and looked at the satellite photos, and it says, it was raining that day. This is how hated they are over there.
Yeah. Yeah. And and even Malachy's book, Amongst
Women.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that would stand alone on its own.
He sold millions of copies of that book. I mean, he was #1 in Australia with that book.
So, John, do you think, I know you're aware of, at the time Angela's ashes was on, Frank was on the Late Late Show, and there was a guy in the audience, Jerry Hannon, who seemed to be very bitter or very anti-McCourt, and that's a famous clip. Do you think that had a big influence on the way Angela's ash, was portrayed, or did it put a kind of?
First of all, doing an interview on the Late Late Show should have no effect on the book itself. Now, that guy you're talking about, he actually had a radio show in Limerick, and he made his life's mission to condemn Angela's ashes. And Malachy met him when he was over for the musical and apologized to him and said that he had a drinking problem and stuff like that. And he was making a living off it, and he would never do it again. And that's why you don't hear anything about that anymore.
Yeah. It does seem a shame. And especially as you say, that Malachy, is 93 now. So, maybe it'll posthumously change, but that's too little too late.
Yeah, it is. They had the chance. What do you get over here? They give Key to the City. I know they can make him an honorary Limerick man or something like that. They could have done that and particularly to Frank. I mean, Frank wrote the book that every college here in the States, that's almost required reading for memoirs and stuff like that. And, people from different countries identify with the poverty of Limerick at that time. And that wasn't unique to Limerick. Dublin had plenty of poverty. Belfast.
Absolutely.
But people think, you shouldn't, keep those skeletons in the closet. You don't want to reveal those secrets and everything. I think you got to be kidding me, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I got that off my chest anyway.
No, it is a bit of a travesty. I agree with you. What else do I need to talk to you about? There was one thing as well I saw on the social media site. It may not have been on your site, but there was definitely a reference to it. This 9-year debt, Guinness debt.
Well, that was 2 years ago, right? I became famous in Dublin, but it was a national story. I was on RTE, BBC, and everything. But the story is 10 years ago, I pick up this guy. It's 4 a.m, and this is before credit cards, and he didn't have enough cash on him. And he said, listen, I own a bar in Dublin, and it's Gaffney and Sons. I never heard of it. And I said, yeah, okay, you own a bar. He goes, no, if you ever come over to Dublin, all right, how much do I owe you? We figured it out in euros, dollars, that it was the price of 2 pints. So he wrote it on a trip sheet, which was the official New York cabbie thing for writing down stuff, your work at night, when you went out, the tolls and stuff like that. So he wrote on it, please give this cab driver 2 free pints when he comes to Gaffney's Son in Dublin. So now, because my people are from Donegal, when I land in Dublin, I don't stay in Dublin. I just head north, go up through Enniskillen and then into Pettigo and stuff like that. So I never had a reason to go there. So now I'm doing my play at the Sean O'Casey Theater in the East Wall. Beautiful theater. Joe Mooney was great to me, one of the community organizers. So I said, I sent it over to Joe Mooney and David Gilney, a Dublin playwright. I said, You know what? This is a story. I know stories. Send this out to the media. So and there is that domino effect. So it goes out to the media, and then what happens? Full page story, and either the Mirror and then it was in the Independent, and then the radio shows pick it up. So I was on a ton of radio shows. They were sending calls for me, and then the television pick up what the radio does. So I'm on RTE Morning with that Kerry guy. I don't know who the two of them are. There was a woman and a guy.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was on their show. So I am being treated like royalty in Dublin. I'm having cars sent for me. I took one cab, and the cabbie said, "Oh, are you that cabbie from New York? We've been listening to you." He goes, "We have a WhatsApp group following what you're doing in Dublin." So now I get an email, right? And here's what anybody that ever drinks Guinness prays that it happens. It says, we're the PR department of Guinness. If you're available, can you come to the storehouse for a private tour? I said, if I'm available. I said, this is like getting an email from the Pope saying, if you're available, can you come to the Vatican to meet me? So I get whisked away to the Guinness storehouse. They take me back stage, or, back. They give me a private tour. We push everybody out of the way, up and down all the. They gave me a swag bag with my own pint glass and a T-shirt and this and that. And it was. I'm telling you now, never had anything like it. So then, I was Johnny 2 Pints, right? So toast to the town. Guinness loves me. Guinness is following me on all my, Instagram and this and that. And they corrected me. I said, I went to the Guinness warehouse today. John, could you make that the storehouse? It's not the warehouse. So this is how on top of it they were. And they loved what I was doing.
Yeah,
so now a year later happens, right? So I said, hey, Guinness, I'm coming over now again, doing my play up in Donegal. Maybe you can help sponsor me. Nothing. No feedback. No. I went from Johnny 2 Pints to Johnny Who in 1 year. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. But you know what? Johnny TikTok is coming back to Ireland, and we'll see how that goes over.
And did you get your 2 pints off the guy?
Oh, yeah. 2 pints. I got a 200 pints. The publicity the Gaffney and Son got, they put up a big banner in the front of the bar welcoming me to the Fairview, right by Crow Park and everything like that.
I know Fairview, yeah, in Dublin.
Yeah. So, oh my God, I listen, I could have drank my way, but everybody was offering me drink no matter where I went. I said, listen, fellas, I can do two things. I can only do one thing. I can either drink while I'm in Dublin, or I can do the play while I'm in Dublin. I can't do both because the show sold out like at the Sean O'Casey Theater. Beautiful theater there, but so that went well.
And John, are you going to play Limerick?
You know what? Here's the problem. Because you guys don't honor Limerick, I have no hooks there. So I don't have anyone there. Like, I go where people know me. Like, I in Cork City, I know Conal Crean, very famous author down there. So he got me into the Cork Art Theater. I know a ton of people in Dublin. So they got me into the Teachers Club. Now, up in Ballyshannon, I know a Sinn Féin councillor from Bundoran, Mick McMahon. He knew the artistic director. So I went and met her, and that place holds 300, and we sold it out. And so I go where I meet the people, and then we get behind it, because I'm not going to be able to sell tickets being over here. They need to push it, get it into the local media and stuff like that. So I haven't been to Galway or Limerick or even Sligo because I really don't know anyone there that's connected to the theater world. Now, if I got an email later today saying, oh, if you're coming over, I run this theater, say in Galway, we'd like to have you here for a night, I would get back, yeah, let's pick a date. I'm coming over and bringing my laptop because, listen, I'm not a big operation. It's a one-man show with a laptop. I plug it into their computer, their projector, and screen, and then I'm off and running for 70 minutes. So it's not this big musical that's coming to town, where I'm a song and dance guy, which I ain't. So,
class, yeah, that's good. That's very good. We're coming to the close. What's next for John McDonagh?
I'm doing the play again here in Manhattan on St. Patrick's Day at the New York Society of Ethical Culture. And like I said, well, right now I'm doing a storytelling series in Queens at a comedy club called QED. And I call it from the BQE to the QED. The BQE here is a disaster of a highway here where everybody's stuck on it. So that's been selling out. It's the second Thursday of every month. So that I'm really working on. And then I go back to Ireland. I might, if I get a couple of emails, I might do the play. If not, I just enjoy bouncing around the country. I just got back 2 weeks ago. I was over in Donegal for a week, just hanging out in Bundoran and Ballyshannon and stuff like that. So,
And
I'm just enjoying life. I have to enjoy it. I'm not going over to make a ton of money. All I need to do is break even. You know what I mean? That it doesn't cost me to put on the play. I don't need, it's not a vanity project to the extent I will rent out the theater. I will do this. I'll take out paid advertising. No. If you can do it and we can break even, that's all I'm looking at,
Yeah, brilliant. And just going back to the radio show. So are you still hosting the radio show?
Yeah. Still doing it. I mean, we we always have whatever plays on at the Irish Repertory Theater, which is now they're doing a Brian Friel series. So we had Sean McGinley on, a very famous Irish actor, and then we had his wife on, Maura Mullen, and Sean McGinley's from Pettigo. I mean, his father was the customs man there, so he's a Pettigo Ballyshannon man. So I have all the actors that are at the Irish Rep and at the Irish Arts Center. Like, there's never lack of stories here in New York of people coming out. So we promote shows of people that are coming out. Like what's coming up now is the first Irish Origin Theatre Festival. So I'll be promoting whoever's coming out from Ireland, doing their one-man shows and stuff like that. So it's fun. As long as I'm having fun, we do it. If it doesn't, then I'll do something else.
Brilliant. Geez, I might touch base with you and get a few contacts that might come on the podcast. Some Irish people that you know over there. It would be great. So I think we're done, John. You're very
well. If you want, I can finish with the poem that you were bringing up.
Love it.
I have it right here in my hands, and as I described in the earlier thing, how the poem came about with Salman Rushdie and everything like that at Penn, and how the New York Times christened me the Bard of Gridlock, of which I'll always have on anything I put out. So this is my observations of the city changing while I was a cab driver, and it's called What Happened to My City. Familiar neighborhoods are strangers again. The alphabet jungle has become the Lower East Side. Crime Square has turned into Times Square. Bushwick has ceased to exist, replaced by East Williamsburg. People asked to go to Sobro. They're no longer running from the South Bronx. What happened to my city? The Twin Towers used to be two, but now there's only one. New Yorkers used to yell at each other. Now we tweet. Pissing in the street has been replaced by picking up after your dog. Squeegee men and graffiti artists are now found in museums, and the yuppies have turned into hipsters. What happened to my city? The ashtrays in the back of the cab have been replaced by TVs. People used to get high on weed and beer. Now they're high on ecstasy and Molly. No longer do you take change, but do you take credit cards? Taxis are getting smaller, but New York asses are getting bigger. What's happened to my city? The junkies used to do the dope dance, 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. Now they're balancing on yoga mats and they're doing Tai Chi. Watch out for the red light cameras. Don't go in that bus lane. Stay out of the bike lane. What's happened to my city? That's it.
John, brilliant. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be in contact again.
Yeah, well, you know how to find me. I'm not that hard to find.
No,
go to TikTok.
TikTok. Great stuff. John, thanks a million.
Yeah, all right.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you now. Bye-bye now.
Thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode of Irish by the Grace of God. If you like it, please share it with your friends and family, and check out our website shows.acast.com/Irish by the Grace of God -podcast. Here you'll find all our social media pages to make contact. If you know of any Irish people living abroad with an interesting tale, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you and tune in next week. Bye bye.